Hey, remember that Arkham Knight game that came out 9 years ago? Well, I sure do. And so after the whole debacle surrounding Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, I've decided to reinstall Rocksteady's previous title to wash away that bitter taste I felt after playing Suicide Squad. And before I delve into the various topics about this game, can we just all agree that Arkham Knight has probably one of the coolest, most badass intro sequences in gaming?
It took just 24 hours for us to lose control of the city. Tonight, Gotham's relying on one man to save us all.
Wasn't that amazing? I swear, if there's one thing Rocksteady really nailed back then was how they actually managed to make you feel like the Batman. Anyway, we'll get more into that later on. So first of all, let's talk about the most obvious element to this game. The one element that everyone is comparing this Suicide Squad game to, the graphics. And yes, even today, 9 years later, Arkham Knight really does hold up in comparison to a lot of other games, in particular, of course, to Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. Now, I gotta mention that I'm running this game on a 4090 graphics card, as well as a Ryzen 9 7950 X3D, as well as 64 gigs of RAM. So I can max out this game pretty easily with no problems at 1440p. Unfortunately, it seems like the frame rate is capped at 90, so I haven't been able to play this game over that frame rate, but I've always had a stable frame rate, no drops whatsoever. But then again, that's really not a surprise considering my setup. Now, I do remember when Arkham Knight launched back in 2015, the game got a lot of flack for a lot of technical issues, but so far I haven't had a single one, not a single bug actually. It's been running really well. Then again, you know, old Rocksteady really worked hard to fix all the bugs. And yeah, they worked their asses off when the game had released to make sure that it was as stable as possible. Now, one thing that I've been thinking about is why this game looks so good comparatively to a lot of other games today. And I think it's mostly because the entire game is set throughout a very long night in a very rainy and wet Gotham City. And so I think Rocksteady was able to hide a lot of the smaller, I would say, graphical stuff like artifacts and, you know, incomplete textures and whatnot. Still, when you're looking at the city from a distance and just Batman in general and characters in general, the game does really hold up. And comparatively, I do think it's pretty insane that this game holds up as well as it's done up until today. Now, when it comes to the gameplay, I would say that Arkham Knight is most definitely the definite game if you want to be the Batman, really, because you've got the entirety of Gotham City as your playground. You essentially have Batman's full arsenal at your disposal, which you collect throughout the game and unlock throughout the game. And you have a relatively simple skill tree that feels advanced enough to where you feel like your Batman is growing more powerful as the story goes on. And I just absolutely wish that Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League didn't have so much visual clutter as it has, because comparatively, when you look at Arkham Knight, it's just so beautiful. You don't have to see a bunch of numbers everywhere. It doesn't give you a headache just by looking at everything that's happening on the screen. It feels like a very focused type of game compared to something like Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. I mean, if there's really one thing that I think Rocksteady really hit the nail on the head with, it's absolutely the traversal, because you really do feel like the Batman when you've unlocked most of the traversal skills and you're just gliding throughout or over Gotham City seamlessly, easily, and you feel like you're in full control of Batman. Another aspect there that's just amazing is the free flow combat system. I think that's what it's called. But, you know, it's the classic combat that we've seen from the Arkham games where you're using all kinds of tools at your disposal, as well as a lot of grappling and fighting moves to take down goons and criminals, and you can use various combos to completely break your enemies without killing them. Now, one thing that I absolutely also love with this game and also previous Arkham games is the fact that you don't only play as Batman all the time. There's a quest line for you to save Catwoman from the Riddler. And so you take control of Catwoman every now and then. You get to play as these different characters and get to experience sort of what it would feel like controlling these characters, because you do. And I think this really was the testing grounds for if they could actually make games in the future where you control people like Harley Quinn, where you control people like Catwoman and Robin and Nightwing. And I think they really made it super fun in Arkham Knight, especially because there's so many different movesets that are unique to them. And so it's always refreshing to switch between characters. And I just really wish that we had gotten, for example, like Harley Quinn, I think is a cool character. I just wish that she would have her own standalone game, because there is a DLC, which is also great, that released with Arkham Knight. And so again, like I feel like a lot of these characters really should have their sort of solo experiences or solo games. I think they would be very successful if they just did that, right? As you know, as long as the story and the script and characters and dialogue is good as well. But yeah, definitely like the combat is absolutely a highlight with this game, and I never really get tired of it. It's just always so fun to just, you know, string up like 30 to 50 hit combos and just absolutely devastating a huge, almost like an army of goons, and you just feel so powerful when you do that. And it doesn't matter if you play as Batman or Harley Quinn or any of the other characters, it really is sort of a power trip when you play this game. Now, on the other hand, I would say that the one thing I don't like to this day with Arkham Knight is the Batmobile. I mean, I wouldn't say that I hate it, but I wish, I don't know how to explain it. It just feels so clunky. And especially, you know, when you start off trying out the Batmobile, there's this little jump that you have to do across like a gap. And I just, you know, when I started controlling the thing again, I was reminded like why I didn't like the Batmobile so much, because it's just so clunky. It's so hard to drive. I mean, it's supposed to be like a tank slash racing car all in one, right? Because you can sort of transform it into a battle tank and then back to a car again. And as much as I like the aesthetics of it, the sound of it, especially controlling like the weapons and the tank version, I much prefer just using the grappling hook to just traverse around the city and just flying over Gotham. Now, I don't know if there's too much to say about like acting performances and such. I do think that Kevin Conroy, of course, and Mark Hamill outdid themselves here, really. Like they really do feel like the ultimate versions of what the Joker and Batman are. And I didn't realize up until when I started playing this again that Mike Ehrmantraut from Breaking Bad actually plays Commissioner Gordon, which is interesting. Of course, his name is not Mike Ehrmantraut, the actor that is. The actor is Jonathan Banks. Big fan of his. He has a very recognizable voice, especially if you've seen Breaking Bad.
Hey, Batman. Every damn time.
But yeah, that was a surprise. I do think he plays the role of Commissioner Gordon pretty well. Would love to see him more in the future as Gordon, because I think the voice fits, I guess, the face in a way. Anyway, there's a lot of cool characters in Arkham Knight, and I do feel like they all fit the overall narrative, I guess, of the game. Of course, I don't want to spoil too much of what happens in this story, but essentially what Arkham Knight is about is, well, about Batman facing off against a mysterious individual called Arkham Knight. Now, a lot of you have played the game, so you already know who that is, but I do feel like the mystery is pretty intriguing, especially the first time I played it. I actually liked it a lot. I could already like guess who it was based on what I knew from the comics and Batman's history, so it wasn't really a surprise to me. I still thought it was like a relatively pleasant reveal at the end of the day. I guess the only one thing that I didn't really love about the game is how it it really ends at the end of the day, like the final actual ending when you've like unlocked everything and done everything, like 100%ed the game. Not entirely against it today, but I do remember that I didn't love it very much the first time. But comparing it to something like Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, I do much prefer how it ended there, and I would have loved it if they just kept it as it was in Arkham Knight. At the end of the day though, like, is it worth playing Arkham Knight in 2024? I guess you could ask. Absolutely, absolutely. The game is relatively cheap. Then again, it's been 9 years, so that comes to no one's surprise, I guess. It runs really well, it plays so well, and comparatively, I don't think there's any game really like it, except for maybe the Spider-Man games. But then again, you know, I much prefer and like playing as Batman and the various characters in Arkham Knight more than I do Spider-Man for a strange reason. Even if Spider-Man 2, I think, was pretty good, like the controls, the fighting, Spider-Man's, you know, character. It's just, I don't know if it's this DC fanboy in me. I'm also a big Spider-Man fanboy, of course, because, you know, I dressed up as Spider-Man when I was like 3, 4, or 5 years old, somewhere around there. Like when I was a very small kid, I loved Spider-Man, so no hate there. But Rocksteady really made something special with the Batman Arkham games, and I do think that Arkham Knight is like the penultimate version of what a Batman game should be, or well, the ultimate version. And it's obvious that Insomniac has taken a lot of inspiration from the Batman Arkham games, and rightfully so, because the games are absolutely legendary, and if you haven't played them at all, you should definitely start with Arkham Asylum. Now, before you ask, I did try to install Arkham Asylum, but for some reason I couldn't. There's some issue that I seemingly can't solve. Maybe I will at some point soon enough, but yeah, that's why I'm not talking about Arkham Asylum first, because I couldn't start off with that game. If you're from a younger generation, I do feel like you're missing out on the Arkham games if you didn't play them, because they really are the ultimate Batman experience. Arkham Knight, I think, looking back at it today, it deserves a lot of praise, and Rocksteady deserves a lot of praise for what they made back then. And I really hope that they go back to that type of single-player greatness sort of gameplay design and world design. And I think that's what a lot of people wanted before even Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League was announced. I guess we all just wanted another Arkham-type game where you're maybe either controlling somebody else like Superman, or you're playing as Catwoman, Harley Quinn, whatever, as long as it had its own like standalone story and it wasn't live service. And I guess that's all I wanted to say about Batman Arkham Knight. Thank you for watching and have a great day.